Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 63 of the Rock Podcast. For those about the pod, we salute you. In this episode, we've reached the letter P in the 8th set of rock. Thank goodness. We've got hidden gems, of course, rock news, new rock on the block, and lots of just inane chat between me and Brian. So, without further ado, here he is. The man in the outfield T-shirt this week. I like that, as opposed to Bohemian FC, which must be in the wash, I imagine. Here's Brian. Here he is. And it was your birthday, Brian. Hello, Brian, by the way. I'm just going straight into your birthday. But how are you doing?
Matthew.
Are you okay? How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good.
1 year older.
Yeah, but another trip around the sun, man.
Yeah.
1 year older. Yeah. Did you have a nice birthday?
I had a lovely birthday. I went out for a nice bite to eat. Yes, it was lovely. Lovely.
Did you get any, I think we're all wondering, did you get any Princess Diana memorabilia to add to your collection?
No, but I am being indoctrinated into Nuwobum as they speak, Matthew. I am now the proud owner of my first ever Judas Priest album. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Yeah. The deluxe edition. I bought Brian the deluxe edition. Yeah. I bought Brian the deluxe edition. Deluxe. I don't know what that means, actually. I mean, it's like you get a couple of extra songs and a little booklet or something. Deluxe edition of Invincible Shield by the Mighty Judas Priest, who we talked about last time, didn't we, I think?
And you've just been to see them. I
did. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. It was great. A fantastic gig. Loved it. Judas Priest were amazing. Lots of kind of greatest hits. Lots of songs off the new album, which were good. Rob Halford was in fine form. The singer of Judas Priest. I should probably tell people who they are, because not everyone knows who Rob Halford is, of course. Rob Halford, the singer of Judas Priest, was in fine form in his 70s. Amazing. Saxon were great. Saxon was sounding good. Augmented by Brian Tatler of Diamond Head, of course. That's an amazing transformation as a result of Brian joining them. And Uriah Heep kicked things off at about 7:15 or something in the evening, which I think probably suited them down to the ground, because they could have had a nice cup of tea. And Match of the Day wasn't on that night. They would have been home for Match of the Day, but they probably were home for Antiques Roadshow, probably, something like that, I guess. I don't know what day of the week it was on. Anyway, we digress. It's good fun. News time, Brian. What has caught your eye, Brian? Straight in. Yeah, I caught you by surprise with that.
No, you haven't. You haven't at all. We got through April Fool's Day this year, Matthew, unscathed this year.
Yes.
I didn't. Mm-hmm. I didn't choke in my cornflakes with a revelation of you quitting the show.
No. But actually, do you remember when we did do it? People thought, yes, good idea. Yeah, I never liked him anyway. Brian was my favourite. I thought that's lovely. That is. Yeah. No April Fools from us. But there were some, weren't there?
Oh, there were some brilliant ones. I think the one that caught my eye, which was just brilliant, was Robert Fripp. So Robert Fripp, who, for those who do not know who Robert Fripp is, Robert is the leader of King Crimson, which is one of the pioneers of progressive rock. Very serious Englishman, he always replete, dressed very well. You could probably say, very eccentric. But then during COVID, he's married to Toyah Wilcox, and both him and Toyah have been doing cover versions of various songs, and they've now got a completely new global audience. But Robert, on April Fool's Day, announced to the world and via Facebook that he was starting his OnlyFans page, and there was a picture of Robert Fripp in the buff holding a guitar, and I cried with laughter, Matthew. It was brilliant.
Yeah. I thought that was true. I thought, well, okay. I don't know what OnlyFans is, really. No. I don't. And I thought, okay, great, good on you. In the same way, it was announced that Scott Ian of Anthrax Is it Anthrax? He said,
Yeah.
You look doubtful then. I thought, have I got that wrong? Scott Ian of Anthrax. There was a rumor, or a joke. I thought that's a good idea of him joining AC/DC as a replacement for Stevie Young, i.e., on the rhythm guitar. And I thought that's a good idea. And actually, I think it was an April Fool joke. So in a way, there's a fine line between a joke and something you think, a bit like us last year with ours. A fine line between that's actually a good idea. Scott Ian joining AC/DC, or Matt Rogers leaving the podcast for pastures new. Any others catch your eye, Bri?
No. The Robert Fripp one was just brilliant. I don't want to get too. I try not to listen to them too much because I am gullible. And I just fall for them. But the Robert Fripp and Scott Ian ones were brilliant. And sorry, there was one where Fish, who obviously Fish is doing his farewell tour, and over the years, Fish, he would tell you himself he has had his vocal challenges, and he changes his material, and he changes his vocal interpretation to just save his voice in a grueling tour. And Fish had announced that because of the overwhelming response to his farewell tour, he was going to do matinee acoustic shows for the entire tour.
Yeah,
and people go, oh, brilliant, yes, and I was like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, see, I thought that was a good idea. I thought that'd be a good idea. By the way, did you know that they've taken the word gullible out of the dictionary? Did you know that? Right. Shall we move on?
Yeah, we'll move on. Anything else in news?
Well, loads. I just started. Kiss. No, I'm starting to become a real Kiss fan. Now they finished. I think it's inspired by reading Paul Stanley's autobiography. But
which
Kiss,
is brilliant.
It is really good, really good. We talked about it last time in Book Club of Rock. But Kiss have decided, along with many others, and in a way, you'd put your house on them doing this. They've decided that they're going to sell, well, they've sold, in fact, their rights to all their music, the name Kiss, their likenesses, in other words, obviously the makeup and everything, the demon and the Star Child and so on, to a company called Pop House, which is quite a nice name. Of course, needless to say, it's Swedish. Entertainment company founded by ABBA's Bjorn Ulvaeus.
Well said.
Thank you. And Pop House, which I think is a great name. It's a classic kind of Euro pop name, isn't it? Pop House, rather. Pop House planned to use the deal to create a live music show using avatars. We knew about this, of course, of Kiss, similar to ABBA Voyage, which features digital versions of ABBA, of course. But this is the interesting bit, of course. And you thought surely Kiss have got enough money now. Come on, you've been going, 50 years, got loads of merchandise and so on, but they have sold all that stuff, the name and the music and everything, $300 million. I mean, as I've asked you many times, Brian, what do you do with $300 million? I mean, come on. $300, do me. I'm going to Vegas in a few weeks. Someone gives me $300. I'm like, thanks very much. 300 million. Mind boggles, doesn't it?
The mind does boggle, but this is the funny part. When Gene Simmons then comes out after the announcement, he said, but we're not doing it for the money.
No. I think he might have had his tongue fairly well and truly wedged in his cheek when he said that. Come on, Gene.
Yes.
Lovely Gene.
Yeah. But it would be quite funny if the Pop House people turned around and said, we own everything now, Matt. We own all of the Kiss stuff. Let's just stick it all in a closet, and we'll come back in 20. We'll just come back to it in 20 or 30 years' time, and that means Kiss are officially done.
Yeah. Well, I like Kiss. I mean, I'm not a dyed in the wool fan, but Have done some good stuff. So anyway, looks like we're going to see the Avatars in the same vein as ABBA, which apparently is very good. I've not seen it, but the ABBA Voyage is supposed to be very, very good. What else you got for us, Bri?
Well, kind of in the similar vein, the way things are going in Planet Skid Row, Skid Row might decide that they bring an avatar in to replace or bring in to have a lead singer. It's been interesting. Eric, who is Eric Gronwall.
That's right. Well pronounced. It's very Swedish, this news section so far. Eric Gronvall, yeah.
Yes, yep. Eric. So Eric's was the last singer in Skid Row, and what a singer he was. You know, when you look at some of the YouTube covers and just any of the footage of Skid Row, he just fitted the band brilliantly. So it sounds like a very, very amicable split. I think Eric just doesn't have the constitution for a life on the road, and he's, for his own wellness and well-being, is stepping back from Skid Row. But in a turn of events, Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm is going to be sitting in a number of shows, which I think is going to be
God, amazing! She's an amazing singer,
isn't she? Just you know. So
I'd love to see that. I think they should keep her full time. She could double up with Hailstorm, surely.
She could be the female version of Miles Kennedy. You know, whenever Alter Bridge isn't touring, he's out with Slash, and you know, so that would be brilliant. And obviously Sebastian, Sebastian's straight on to social media going, guys, let's give the kids what they want. You know, me back in the band.
Yeah, Sebastian Bach, who was the original singer of Skid Row. I'm not sure whether, I think he got fired, didn't he? I don't know. I can't remember now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's suggesting. It's funny. You and I talked about this earlier. You know, when artists' solo careers don't go quite according to plan, they sort of suggest, should I come back? Do you want me back? Any opportunity, but I don't think they'll have him back. But they might do. I mean, who knows? But that's a genius selection, Lizzie Hale for
Fabulous.
Skid Row.
Yeah,
and you have some sympathy for Eric Gromwell, as you say. He's an amazing singer. He has, but he's been battling cancer for the last couple of years. Specifically acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and he's said, I think he's been very brave to basically say, look, I'm done, guys, because I need to concentrate on my ongoing cancer treatment, and I can relate to that, of course.
Yeah.
And we wish him well, and of course, carry on recovering, Eric, and look forward to the saga of Skid Row continuing to play out. Of course, good stuff.
Well, now the Kiss are off the road. We need to find bands that are going to continue to entertain us with things that are happening in their organizations. Other changes in bands, which I thought this is really sweet. Anthrax are going out on tour soon, and Frankie Bello, who's the long-standing bass player in the classic lineup of Anthrax. So for personal reasons, Frank's had to, he's not available for the next run of their touring. So what the band have done is they haven't brought in a Duff McKagan or a celebrity substitute bass player. They've brought in their original bass player, a gentleman called Dan Furcus. So Dan was the co-founding member of Anthrax, and he left the band 40 years ago, and the Anthrax guys have brought back in Dan. So I think that's really really cool that the original bass player can come back in and actually get a chance to probably play some of the venues with Anthrax with a big audience. So I thought that was a really nice nice touch from the Anthrax guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, getting quite a few mentions. I'm not sure we've mentioned Anthrax ever on this podcast, and already 2 mentions in one episode. There you go. But yeah, it's a nice touch. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to see Anthrax, they're one of the big four, of course, along with Megadeth, Metallica, and Slayer. Who are not now. Are not going to be
But
headlining.
yeah,
They're not headline. I'm absolutely devastated. No Slayer for Stone Dead. How about that for a segue? Instead, it's Saxon, announced after they finished the tour with Priest. And what do you think about that, Bri? I know what you think, but pretend you're happy.
oh, I could pretend I'm happy. I think it's great. It's fun. Do you know what? It'll be fun. It'll be, I'll be singing along to Wheels of Steel as ever. I think for a lot of people it was the worst kept secret in Stone Dead history, and I think everybody was willing it to happen, and I think part of you and me were kind of going, oh, wouldn't it be great if it was somebody like Slayer?
Absolutely.
If it wasn't Saxon, it just would have been hilarious to watch. Just to watch the fan pages on Facebook going and meltdown.
Yeah,
but it's a brilliant lineup.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, looking forward to it. Well, you and I will be there, of course.
We will be there
in August of this year. Stone Dead Festival in north of England. Just one final one, which I'm really looking forward to if it comes off. So, School of Rock. We talked about that magnificent film. My level of kind of films are fairly low, of course. There's no Citizen Kane in my DVD collection, but Frank Black. No, not Frank Black. But Frank Black.
We might come on to Frank Black later on.
We may do. But Jack Black has said he's up for a potential sequel to the 2003 hit School of Rock, which we referred to many times. And he's even got a name for it, which is quite something. He wants to call it Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo, or School of Rock 2 Electric Boogaloo, I should say, which is from the Breaking 2, which was a film. I don't know what that was about. Was it breakdancing or something? I don't know. In the 80s. Anyway, we digress. But yeah, I'd like that. That'd be fun. A School of Rock 2. I'm not sure. A lot of the kids, of course, were grown up, and part of the appeal of the first film was that the kids were, the kids were the stars. It was great, as well as Jack Black and of course Joan Cusack and the rest of the cast. But I wouldn't mind that. I'd love that. And I've seen the stage show as well. It's good. It's a good show if you ever get a chance to see it.
Well, look at it this way, Matt. If he makes School of Rock 2, it means that we don't have to watch Kung Fu Pandu 5.
Kung Fu Pandu?
Kung Fu Panda 5.
That's true. Or Kung Fu Pandu. No, that's very true.
Neither of which are in my DV collection as well, too.
No, quite. Do people even buy DVDs anymore? I don't know. I mean, you can stream things, can't you? Of course, by the touch of a button these days. Yeah, we digress. Modern technology. We're always behind the times, aren't we, Brian? We
are very much.
I think that was it. Before we move on, though, I just wanted to mention this is not news, but this is it's a really nice message we got. So Grant Surtees, who's one of our listeners, as is his dad, Peter. This was a couple of episodes ago. We talked about the letter M and specifically Marshall amps. Do you remember we talked about Jim Marshall and the legacy of Marshall amplification? And Grant was chatting to his dad, Peter, and Peter sent us Grant sent us this little kind of message about his dad, which I think is great. He said, "I really enjoyed the podcast. Brian's my favourite."
Thanks, Grant.
Say that. Yeah. Oh, okay. Shall we? All right. I'll move on anyway. So he says actually, Jim Marshall's shop was not in Denmark Street in London, but in Hanwell High Street in London. It was originally a drums shop, but they had a few guitars on sale. And he says his dad, Peter, bought his first guitar there in the early '60s from Jim Marshall's shop. And in fact, he asked Jim Marshall. This is lovely. And you can kind of play the guitar, not very well, as we've established many times, but you can kind of relate to this. So Peter used Jim Marshall's shop phone to call his dad to say, "I need to buy a slightly more expensive guitar. Is that okay?" And I thought that was lovely. Checking in with your dad, always a good thing. But he said also that he thinks that Keith Moon worked in this shop. Keith Moon from The Who, of course, as a young fella, worked in the Jim Marshall's drum shop as a Saturday boy, and got drum lessons from Jim Marshall. And of course, we all know what happened to Keith Moon, one of the greatest drummers ever, and obviously in the Who and so on. Sadly, no longer with us. And Peter Surtees did work later for for Jim Marshall rather, when he was doing plastic molding and screen printing for mixing desks. So I thought that was a really nice story. Thanks, Grant. Thanks, Peter, for this. A, for listening, and B, for sending in that story. I thought it was really good. And of course, I forgive you for Brian being your favourite, because I know everyone's favourite is Brian. So there you go. Anyway, let's move on.
So, Matt, we now come to my favourite part of the show.
Yeah.
New Rock on the Block. Brian's bangers.
Copyright. Yes. What have we got first?
We're going to kick off with the triumphant return of the Robinson brothers. The Black Crowes have just released their latest album, which, sorry kids, I'm going to use bad language, but it's their words, not mine. Happiness Bastards has just dropped. It's the new album by the Black Crowes. A couple of singles are out off the album. The Wanting and Waiting was the first single that came out. It is classic Black Crowes. It's got that lovely swagger to it. Matt, what did you think?
Well, you put me on the spot here, Brian, as usual, but it's certainly one of my albums of the year so far. It is absolutely brilliant. It's got so much depth. There's so much going on. The songs are great. The performances are great. Chris Robinson's voice sounds fantastic. It's almost like the last 30. It's like almost a sequel to the first couple of albums.
Yeah.
And it's so good. And it's as I say, great songs. Wanting and Waiting is fast becoming one of my favourite songs of the year so far. When we look back at the end of the year, this will certainly be in the top 10 albums of the year.
Yeah.
First album for 15 years, is it? I think it's been a while since
it's been a while.
The Black Crowes. But it's great. It's great playing. I mean, I was thinking about their influences are, they wear their influences on their sleeve, as it were. A bit of James Brown in there. There's gospel, there's blues, there's rock, there's Led Zepp, there's the Hammond organ in there. You got Little Richard kind of style in there almost. Robert Plant. There's all sorts going on. It is great. I can't say more than it's one of my favourite albums of the year so far.
Yeah, and when you look at a lot of the new bands that come out, we've talked about the Blackberry Smoke, for example. Even bands like Blackstone Cherry. There's quite a lot of southern rock. That Georgia tinged bourbon blues, and it's like, you can hear the influence of the Faces and particularly the Stones. But then when you hear the Black Crowes, you go, that's the Black Crowes they now have their own sound, and I always was a massive fan of the Southern Harmony, the second album. I thought Remedy was just such a killer track off the second album, and nothing ever really after that met those standards of that second album. And I actually think, Matt, you're absolutely right. I think Happiness Bastards just really picks up as kind of that. It really feels like the third album, and even somebody as great as Steve Gorman, who was the original drummer in the Black Crowes, and I thought he made a lot of the swing and the swagger of the Black Crowes recording. You know, the new drummer and actually the rest of the band, it just sounds revitalized, shot in the arm, whatever you want to call it. And the songwriting and the singing. Chris Robinson is going to go down as one of the most underrated lead vocalists of all time. He very rarely gets a mention, does he, Matt?
That's right. That's right. You're right, actually. Yeah. I mean, when they're talking about great vocals, he's got a unique style. As you said, there's a bit of that sort of Jagger-esque kind of swagger in his voice.
Yeah.
If you can have swagger in your voice. But he's just, as you say, he's got a style of his own and magnificent singer. And he's aged well, of course. I don't think he's ever kind of, he's never sort of been a sort of screamer. He's never been up there through the octaves. But he's kind of still got the chops for sure. But yeah, absolutely magnificent album, and one that I'll be listening to, for a long, long time.
Yeah, touring the UK in May as well too. So if you fancy going out and catching the band, they just started the US tour. Go and catch the Crowes.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, good shout. Good shout. So from the Black Crowes, we come back to the UK. And a band called These Wicked Rivers, who are part of that growing movement in the UK, new wave of classic rock. And they've been sort of bracketed with that group, but they've been going since 2014. Just signed their first album deal. And their current album, or their new album, it's called Force of Nature. What did you make of this, Bri? These Wicked Rivers?
I think this is a very, very. This is only their second album, and as you say, Matt, they've been going. They've been going since 2013, 2014. And for a band that's been on the scene, quite a lot of support slots. We've seen them at Stone Dead Festival, and you could see the potential of the band. This second album is so mature. When I was listening to it, it got me thinking of, bands. There was early Lynyrd Skynyrd. It was even the guitar riffs. You had that kind of stoner rock clutch. Even Rival Sons, that nice guitar sound. But just the song, the songwriting itself, there's a track on the album which is Testify, which they actually did on some of their earlier EPs, and I would just recommend to everybody, go and listen to the early recording of Testify, and how it now is being re-recorded and just reinterpreted. It's just such a great album. It seems to be with lots of good albums this year. The first number of tracks, the tracks like the Family, it gets off to a good rising start. But for me, where the band just seemed to shine is in the slower ballads. Where the war is run is fabulous. Just to be a man. Don't pray for me. The orchestration and the strings, it just showcases the singer. So I wasn't really quite sure what to expect with the album, and I didn't expect it to be as diverse, well produced, well sung. For a band that's, you could go out and catch them supporting, as I say, Rival Sons. They've earned their dues around the club circuit. This is a really mature piece of work. I really quite surprised with it, Matt.
Yeah, me too. I'd say when we select these albums, we try to kind of keep a nice diverse range of new releases. And this didn't necessarily jump off the page, but when you listen to it, as you say, it's a very mature record. The song, you touched upon it, the song "Don't Pray for Me." it's just an epic. It's really good, and it's got a magnificent guitar solo in it. And that, I think, again, would be one of my songs of the year. Absolutely brilliant. But you're right, the rest of the album, it lends itself, of course, to the 40-minute vinyl format. And the album cover, I love the album cover.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of, I'm trying to think what it reminds me, but it's got that kind of, early 70s vibe to it, sort of Jethro Tull, almost kind of, late 60s stand up, benefit type look about it. Maybe, anyway, it looks a bit Jethro Tull like. One of my favorite bands, Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's got a sort of a preaching kind of undertone, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but almost that kind of traveling sort of preacher sort of vibe to it. And when you see the guys, they've all got long beards, the kind of frock coats, the wide brim hats. They've got a certain style, and they famously their stage set essentially is tall lamps with kind of old-fashioned lampshades. It's very, very kind of eccentric, you might say, but well worth seeing. In fact, you and I are going to see them when I come up to Edinburgh. I don't know whether you realise this. A, I'm coming to Edinburgh. B, we're going to sit at Bannerman's. We're going to see These Wicked Rivers on their headlining tour, which I'm really looking forward to. You look again quite quizzical, Bri, as if really you coming all the way up here?
No, no,
up north.
Yeah, up north. I just, to see a band produce this quality piece of work, and we're going to go and see them in Bannerman's. This is
right.
Hopefully people will listen to the album, and they can build on the club tour that they're going on, and who knows? I'm sure they've got a few festival dates booked in the summer, and I just think they need a break because it's such a great piece of work. And yeah. I was very surprised as well too, which is fab.
Yeah, indeed. So check out Force of Nature by the excellent These Wicked Rivers.
Kindly Sheryl Crowe released her album on the 29th of March.
Who did you say? Kindly Sheryl Crowe?
Yeah. She well, she did it on my birthday. She released she released her album for my birthday. That's
nice. That's nice of her.
It's very nice of her. Very nice of her. I thought it was as well too. She didn't tell me.
No, it's a nice surprise.
It was nice surprise.
Will you be getting a Sheryl Crowe picture behind you to replace Princess Diana?
Maybe
Princess
that's what I should do.
Sheryl Crowe in.
Yeah.
You should. She's lovely, Sheryl Crowe, isn't she? Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. I apologise. Back to you, Brian.
Yeah, so Evolution is Sheryl's 12th studio album. It is, again, very, very vinyl friendly, Matt. It's 41 minutes long.
That's right.
It's a funny album. There are some I trying to think of the soundbite to describe this is the album's called Evolution, but there's a number of tracks on this album, Matt, which, if I'm being totally honest with you, could have been direct lifts from the Tuesday night music club.
Yeah,
it had that that Americana feel to it. I remember. There's a oh my goodness, All I Want to Do, for example, which was one of her her breakthrough single. You listen to the two tracks 3 and 4 of the album, Do It Again and Love Life. You could put those as bonus tracks on Tuesday Night Music Club and nobody would be any the wiser. So I thought, here's Sheryl being evolutionary, and she's recording music that could have gone on her debut album, but it just takes her back to that, I suppose, where she's comfortable as a singer songwriter. They standout track. I loved Do It Again and Love Life. The cover of the album, which was a surprise for me, which is the Peter Gabriel track, Digging in the Dirt, which features Peter Gabriel, is just a brilliant interpretation of the track. So yeah, the core part of the album is great. There are a few songs which don't really sit with me, Matt, in terms of, is it a little bit sort of sugary pop. The tracks Alarm Clock and Broken Record, a little bit too light for me. But on the whole, I thought it was a good album. How about you?
Well, I'd be inclined to agree with you. It is a classic slice of Americana at times, and at other times it's a bit too poppy for my liking. There's a couple of songs on it, Alarm Clock and Broken Record, which I think you touched upon it when we spoke about it earlier. Could easily sit on a kind of a Taylor Swift or an Avril Lavigne album. That said, there are some brilliant songs. As you say, the Digging of the Dirt collaboration with Peter Gabriel was great. She's got Wendy and Lisa from Prince's band playing on the album. My favourite song by some distance, again, another song that I'll look back on as one of my favourites of the year, a song called Don't Walk Away. Absolutely beautiful, amazing singing and a lovely song and a really nice sentiment too. But also you can't change the weather is really good. Evolution, which has been the lead off track, is absolutely amazing. Really good song, and features Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine playing that classic. Is it a pickup switch? He sort of uses that pickup switch as a. I'm asking you, Brian. I think you kind of know a bit about guitars. Not much has been
He does,
established many times, but it's classic Tom Morello. That's his kind of style. That's his kind of trademark thing, isn't it? But it's a really good album. And you're right. I mean, I was thinking about it, and I bought those early Sheryl Crowe albums, Tuesday Night Music Club, and what was the other one called? I can't remember what it's called now. But she did a couple, didn't she, back to back, early mid 90s. I also saw her. So I was reading about her. And of course, famously, before she was a solo artist in her own right, she was in in Michael Jackson's backing.
She was indeed, yeah.
Backing singer.
Yeah.
And I saw that Bad tour, so I probably saw Sheryl Crowe on stage as a backing singer with Michael Jackson. We should do a bit about backing singers who come forward, because there's been quite a few over the years, haven't there? We'll come on to that in another episode about when we talk about backing singers. Anyway, we digress. But yeah, good album. Check it out. I thought it was really good. As you say, not much of an evolution, but still worth checking out. Evolution by the lovely Sheryl Crowe, the kindly Sheryl Crowe.
Yeah, and for those in the UK, she is playing. She's playing a number of shows during the summertime. I think she's playing like Hampton Court. Obviously, all of them mostly down south, Matthew. So
well, of course,
you can go and see Sheryl. I'll just have to watch it on YouTube.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Brian. But what could I say? Britain's a big place. So we have reached the letter P. Can I have a P, please, Bob?
From famine to feast, Matthew. O to
Indeed.
P.
I quite enjoyed O, actually. We kind of had to dig around that one a little bit, didn't we? But P, oh my God, that's such it's too much, really. We had to skim through a lot of this, but there's nowhere that we can't start anywhere apart from Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. I mean, you and I certainly, grew up with Elvis. I mean, I remember when he passed away in 1977. I mean, that was amazing. Shock news around the world, because he was. I mean, he was a global superstar and continues to be so. As I said, I'm going to Vegas in a few weeks' time, and that'll be, that's kind of Elvis's kind of heartland, not Graceland. Obviously heartland in the middle of the Nevada desert, where he did those flamboyant shows in the 70s. Elvis, the great Elvis Presley. I think everyone's been influenced by him, Bri, singing wise, of course, and of course the birth of rock and roll, really in the mid 50s, courtesy of Jailhouse Rock and Blue Suede Shoes and so on.
Yeah, and when everybody talks in America about all of the American artists of latter days go, oh, it's all about the Ed Sullivan Show and the Beatles, but you go back to whenever the Beatles met Elvis. John Lennon was like, oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
And all of the mythology of him, when he was living in Graceland, and he had a specific burger joint that he liked, and he used to get it flowing in. The stories, and I suppose in recent years with the Baz Luhrmann movie, and Austin Butler, doing the story of Elvis and Colonel Tom Parker, it brings him back into the just back into focus. But he was, he was the king.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
amazing. Even, did you see that Elvis film?
I did.
Elvis autobiography. Yeah, it's excellent, wasn't it?
Very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I might have to watch that again. So that was Elvis. No better place to start than the king of rock and roll. We also need to mention Pink Floyd, of course.
Yeah.
From I guess rock and roll to prog rock, of course. From essentially kind of formed in Cambridge, which is a very appropriate place for progressive rock to kind of kick off from. In the late 60s, originally fronted by Syd Barrett, of course, with Richard Wright, Dave Gilmour. He joined later, of course, with Richard Wright, Roger Waters, and Nick Mason. You a Pink Floyd fan, Bray?
I love Pink Floyd. I think Pink Floyd are one of those bands, the older you get, the more you learn to appreciate some of the great albums. I'd have to say the early period with Sid is not a period, and I know a couple of the singles that you see on documentaries, Bike and is it See Emily Play.
Yeah.
And I only know those tracks because I think David Bowie guested with David Gilmour at a show once, and he wanted to do really early Floyd stuff. So Pink Floyd. Yeah, Pink Floyd to me have made, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, Wish You Were Here is probably my personal favorite album. Yeah, they if you're looking at commercial progressive rock, Pink Floyd's are the benchmark.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. Started off, as you say, more of a sort of psychedelic band formed in the year I was born, actually, amazingly enough. I won't say when.
1952.
Correct. But as you say, amazing kind of legacy, some fantastic albums. And of course, a lot of people will associate them with Another Brick in the Wall, the last number one in the UK of the 1970s. Did you know that?
I did know that.
I thought you would. You should do a rock podcast. Your knowledge of rock music is just phenomenal.
Or just do quizzes. It's how many times do you hear that sometimes in a quiz? What was the last single of the 1970s? Thank you very much.
That's right. Yeah, indeed.
I actually have a couple of P's. I have a couple of let's just say younger prog bands beginning with P. This is like P. So
P is prog rock itself. Is
it's prog rock, exactly. So I've got Porcupine Tree.
Oh, here we go.
And Pineapple Thief.
I'll be back in a few minutes.
That's all we've talked enough about some of my bands. I don't have to, but there you go. Progressive rock is prevailing profusely with Porcupine Tree and Pineapple Thief.
That is particularly impressive. What's the relationship between Porcupine Tree and Pineapple Thief? There is some sort of kind of link there, isn't there? Or are they just two proggy bands that happen to have similar names?
My Padawan, I have taught you well. It's Gavin Harrison. Gavin Harrison is the drummer.
The magnificent Gavin Harrison. Yes, of course.
Exactly.
I just thought I'd tee that up for you. But yeah, they were worth a mention. As is Guy Pratt, talking to Pink Floyd. Guy Pratt was the bass player of Pink Floyd, and is now the bass player of A Sauce Full of Secrets, which is Nick Mason's kind of offshoot band, playing the early Pink Floyd. Worth mentioning because he's a really nice guy, and he is an excellent bass player. Played with like thousands of different people, and it's on that magnificent other podcast that we listen to, the Rockanteurs, which I'd recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good with Gary Kemp.
So I can help you. Here's this. This is the P's are gonna. This is gonna be a segue, Matt. Here's our challenge to see if we can segue every person. So I'm going to segue from Guy Pratt into the Power Station because Guy Pratt actually wrote, with Robert Palmer.
Yep.
Oh, Robert Palmer! Oh my goodness. A track on the Power Station debut album, Go to Zero. So
that's right.
Guy wrote, which I love the Power Station. That was Andy Taylor got to be a good rock guitarist, and obviously did a great cover of Get It On, the T-Rex classic. So there you go.
That's very good. And funny enough, you mentioned Robert Palmer, but some people often think that Robert Palmer was the singer of Led Zeppelin, but of course it wasn't. It was Robert Plant, the great Robert Plant, often known as Percy.
Yeah, I don't know the reference for that.
I shall tell you then, young Brian. Percy Thrower was in the UK in the 60s and 70s was one of the kind of pioneering gardeners or had gardening programs. He used to pop up on Blue Peter. Do you remember?
Yes.
The great Percy Thrower. Well, so Robert Plant equals Percy Thrower, plants gardening equals Percy, as in Robert Plant. So yeah, that's the derivation. Percy Thrower equals Robert Plant equals Percy. But Robert Plant, well, I mean, we talked about Robert Plant, we talked about Led Zeppelin many times. Jimmy Page, of course, another P, an amazing songwriting duo. Wrote Physical Graffiti, of course, another album beginning with P, and my favourite Led Zeppelin album, with music culled from various sessions over the years. Famously recorded mainly at Headley Grange, and we'll put a load of songs off Physical Graffiti on the podcast. I often think about Jimmy Page as the kind of the man who really kind of waves the flag for Led Zepp. Plant's done his own thing over the years. He's been out of Led Zepp more than he was in Led Zepp, of course. And Jimmy Page still flies the flag for everything Led Zepp, doesn't he?
And Guy Pratt played bass on Coverdale Page.
And that's right, indeed. Yes, indeed. That is very true. Well remembered, young Brian. One thing that also struck me when we were going through the P's is the number of drummers. It must be a drummer thing. The number of drummers whose surname begins with P. There are loads. Yeah. Cozy Powell. Well, that wasn't his real name, of course, but Cozy Powell.
Don Powell.
Well, Don Powell is no relation. Don Powell from Slade, of course.
Yeah.
Neil Peart from Rush.
Yeah.
Simon Phillips. Who, of course, played with Judas Priest on Sin After Sin and many other bands, including Michael Schenker Group.
Yeah.
Ian Pace from Deep Purple. And I think one you mentioned earlier, Carl Palmer, of course, from Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah. And then the man...
I'm crossing these off on my list. It's like bingo.
And we cannot forget the man, Matthew. There you go.
The very understated Mike Portnoy.
Yes, the man who would be Peart.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Actually, he's often touted as being, if Rush got back together again, surely it would be Mike Portnoy. We talked about that many times. Singers. We'll come back to bands in a minute, but singers, of course, Steve Perry.
I was going to say, I've seen Joe Perry sing.
Yes. No, he's certainly not a singer. He's a guitarist, yes. Steve Perry, we've talked about him many times. For many, the voice of Journey. And replaced by Arnel Pineda, who's the current singer of Journey. They're over here in the UK in the summer. Their tickets are far too expensive for me to be able to afford to go. But yeah, the mighty Steve Perry of Journey. And of course, Joe Perry, we talked about, Aerosmith guitarist. Fantastic. And again, if you listen to the Rockanteurs, I don't want to promote their podcast too much, but a really interesting interview with Joe Perry of Aerosmith on their podcast. Who else we got, Ryan?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to go into the what genre? This is a Pantera.
Metal. Metal
Are
all
they
the way.
just they metal all the way? So and obviously there's a resurgence in Pantera. Sadly, Daryl and Vinny's father passed away this week.
Oh, really?
80 years.
Oh,
Yeah. He passed away. He was 80 years of age. But Pantera are one of those bands in the sort of late 80s, early 90s where, they in certain magazines, certainly Kerrang were big champions for Pantera, and obviously they're tearing up all over the place with with
Zakk Wylde.
with Zakk Wylde, thank you, and Charlie Benanti from
Yeah.
Anthrax on drums.
Indeed.
So Pantera, yeah.
Well, I put loads of Pantera songs on the playlist. Of course, I love a bit of Pantera. Cowboys from Hell, Cemetery Gates, Mouth for War. Oh, can't wait.
And then a band, a band that I wanted to, that whenever they brought out their the album a few years ago, and I was lucky enough to see them live last year, The Pretty Reckless. Mm-hmm. Really, really good band. I kind of put this band down as a little bit of a one-hit wonder. Do you remember Papa Roach? Remember there was a period of time in the 90s when you had new metal with Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park and all this, and Papa Roach were there with their angsty.
I do.
Yeah,
I do remember them actually.
Paramore.
Yeah. You forgot one of your favourites, Bri. Do you remember a little band featuring Stuart Copeland, Sting, and Andy Summers?
I have indeed. Guess who's below Paramore on the list?
Not literally, I hope.
Yes.
Not from a ranking perspective.
No, not from a ranking. No. Ghost. No. Yes, The Police, The Pretenders, Puddle of Mud.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I've got Pearl Jam.
Yes.
We've got to mention them. We talked about them many times. Do you know why they called their first album 10, by the way? And I know it's a bit of a quiz, but I'm sure you'll know this.
You see, I want to turn around and say, because they were originally called Mookie Blaylock.
Exactly. Yes. And there's a link. It was his number.
Was that his number at the back of
That's
his?
right.
Yeah.
It made me think, when you do your first album, I imagine you'll call it 15, won't you? As in 15 years at university.
Thank you.
Pearl Jam, mighty Pearl Jam. Talked about them many times. Prince, of course. We mentioned Prince earlier with Wendy and Lisa. I mean, just wow. I mean, you can't. Again, a legacy that will last forever. Magnificent singer, songwriter, guitarist, actor, even. Almost.
Yeah.
Purple Rain, of course, was his kind of high watermark. That album was just magnificent. We'll put some songs from Purple Rain on there.
Here's a guilty pleasure band for me, and they often get lampooned, but they had one of the biggest selling singles, I think, of the 1980s, Poison, with I remember watching the chart show. It was the chart show on a Saturday morning on ITV when I was at university, one of those 15 years, Matt. And Poison came on singing. It was, what was the track?
Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Talk Dirty to Me.
Yeah.
That was one of the first singles, and I just thought they were just. I never really did sleaze and glam rock, etc. But Poison, just I thought were all the way through to Unskinny Bop, and they were a really, really great band. Somebody who I'm surprised you haven't mentioned them thus far, as we do know that when you go on to University Challenge, or what's that other program called?
Pointless.
No, not Pointless. Mastermind. When you want a Mastermind, it'll be the history of Diamond Head and Nwabum. That which would be your Praying Mantis.
Praying Mantis, indeed. I had him on my list. A virtual list. Yes, fantastic. Praying Mantis. I first saw them actually at the Mildenhall Rock Festival in 1981 as a fledgling band. They're still going, I think. The Troy brothers, Chris and Tino, I think their names are
Yes.
from memory. Yes, check out some, Praying Mantis. Good sort of almost more proggy than metal.
Yeah.
Praying Mantis.
Yeah.
Magnificent album covers, of course. I think courtesy of Rodney Matthews. Yeah, good shout. Good shout. I had we can't mention or not mention punk rock. We touched upon that once or twice. Punk rock. I found it very scary in the mid-70s when I was a young lad. You must be too young for punk.
I was too young for punk.
I remember that famous Sex Pistols interview with Bill Grundy on causing a stir around the country. How dare people swear on live TV or swear on TV full stop? But I found it a bit scary. But the music was good. Of course, the Sex Pistols and the Clash and Generation X and so on. We'll put some of those on there as an homage to punk rock. Albums-wise, there are loads, Brian. Oh, got to mention Rick Parfitt, by the way. Rick Parfitt of Status Quo.
Good show, yes.
Yeah, the legendary rhythm guitarist of Quo.
Yeah.
Right, albums-wise. So let's rattle off the albums, Brian, shall we? We have got amazing albums. Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Painkiller by Priest. Peace Sells, But Who's Buying by Megadeth. Permanent Ways by Rush. Perfect Strangers. Permission to Land by The Darkness. Peace of Mind, a Power Slave by Maiden. Our Windows by Rush. Power Age by AC/DC. Presence and Physical Graffiti we mentioned earlier. Pronounced Leonard Skinner and Pump. And Pieces of 8 by Styx. That's a nice place to end, isn't it? Any more, Brian?
No. We'll be here all night.
I know, that's true. Well, that was P. I enjoyed that. There's so much scope. However, next time it's Q.
All right. So back to famine.
Oh my goodness. Well, I could like Queen and Queen's Reich.
Yes.
Better start thinking about that now. So, Brian, that brings us to everyone's favourite part of the old podcast.
Hidden Gems Eyes.
Thanks, Lola. Sounded good as always. What you got, Brian?
I have a great documentary that I have recently watched on Amazon Prime Video, which I didn't have to pay for, in the sense of having to buy or rent. You got it free with Amazon Prime.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Do you get? So, just to interject for a minute.
Interact.
So, interact. I think we just made up a word. Interject or interrupt.
Yes.
Do you get money when you talk about Amazon, by the way?
No.
A bit like Frontiers. Do you get a pound every time you mention Amazon Prime?
No.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Back to you then, Bryce. Sorry. I had to ask that question. Sorry for interacting.
Insurrecting.
Insurrecting.
So, before I was educationally interrupted, I have got a documentary, Matthew. Where have you gone?
I'm getting my hidden gem. I'm listening. I'm listening. I have headphones on. I can hear you.
Exactly. My hidden gem for this episode is a fascinating documentary about the Rainbow Bar and Grill. It's famously, we've talked about the Lemmy movie a few episodes ago, where Lemmy famously effectively lived at the Rainbow Bar and Grill. And it's just one of the iconic just places to go to, a rock and roll mecca in Los Angeles on the Sunset Strip. And it's not too long of a documentary, and it basically goes through and chronicles the start of the club, how the owner of the Whiskey A Go Go ended up putting on all of the great bands, the Cream, Led Zeppelin. It was the place to go for rock and rolls. The house band was the Doors, for example, for a while. So the owner of the owner of a Whiskey A Go Go then opened up a bar called Villanova. Renamed it the Rainbow Bar and Grill, and it just basically chronicles the stories It's got some great contributions from obviously Lemmy, Gene Simmons, Matt Sorum. And you find out, here's a pop quiz question for you, Matt.
Yes.
Who are the original Hollywood vampires?
Alice Cooper, John Lennon, Harry Nilsson, John. Did I say? Yeah, I can't remember any others. Probably a couple more, isn't it?
Well, I was going to say, check you out. The only one you've missed is Mickey DeLenz.
Oh, that's right, from the Monkees. Yeah.
So where did they all hang out?
At the Rainbow Bar and Grill,
There you go.
presumably.
It's a great. It's a great documentary. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it talks about it goes through the 60s, the 70s, and brings it right up to date. And there's some hilarious interviews with Slash, talking about with Matt Sorum. Whenever they did the video for Terminator, remember they did "You Could Be Mine" with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And check out the video for "You Could Be Mine" because Slash is very unsteady on that because he'd spent 4 hours in the bar necking Jaeger bombs with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Gee, wow.
So,
I'll do it for you.
So my hidden gem for this episode is The Rainbow. It's a documentary that's on Amazon Prime.
Very
what
good.
have you got?
Well, I've got an album. I'm not sure if we've mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it anyway. It's from a band called The Commoners, who are an excellent band from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, as opposed to the other Toronto, wherever that is.
It's in the northeast of England.
Is it?
There is a place, Toronto, just outside Bishop Auckland.
Is that right?
Yep.
It's not April Fool's, is it, right?
No, I used to drive.
Yeah.
I used to drive to from Bishop Auckland to a little village called Crowe, and it might actually be officially called Toronto Lodge, but Toronto.
Well, thank you. Where was I? Anyway, this is their 2022 album, Find a Better Way. It's absolutely excellent. It has got some great songs on it. I've seen them play them live. They're a great band live. They're playing a few dates in the UK. Hopefully they'll break into the next level with their new. They've got a new album actually coming out this year, which I'm looking forward to. But for now, my hidden gem for episode 63 is the 2022 album by the magnificent Commoners called Find a Better Way. Check it out and check them out on tour if they're playing near you during the summer of 2024 in the UK. So, Brian, that was it. Episode 63 done, dusted.
Boom.
In the can. Have you got? Where is the can? By the way, I can't see it. Is it?
I've kicked it down the
down the road. Very good.
You set it up.
There you go. Well, look, thanks for listening, everyone. Please subscribe on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're also on Scotland Rocks Radio, of course, having a magnificent radio station celebrating their 5th birthday.
They are indeed. Yeah, it's May this.
Happy birthday to Scotland Rocks Radio in a few weeks. We wish them well. But anyway, look, be good to yourselves. Look after each other. Keep the faith. And tell all your friends about this magnificent podcast. That's us, by the way, I'm talking about. For those about the pod, we salute you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for episode 64. Bye.
Rock on.
For those about the pod, we salute you is a Made in Rogers production.